The figure. We've seen him 3 times in-game. The first was in the library, the second was in the electrical room, and the third was strangely enough in the mines. Wait, the mines? That's a weird place for him to be. It's almost like the devs are telling us something about the figure. It's almost like they're showing us that there is more than one figure. Let's start off with his appearance in floor 1. As soon as we go in floor 50, the figure tries to kill us, but then guiding light knocks over a candle, causing him to destroy it. After this, we get the code to go to door 51 while hiding from the figure and making as little noise as possible. But then after we get to floor 100, we see him again as the final boss of floor 1. Now, how did he get here? We know he couldn't have just walked to door 100 because doors is linear and he would have to pass us to get there. We also know that he couldn't have jumped out the window and got there that way because there would be no vibrations leading him to the electrical room. So this leaves 2 possibilities. The first is that he teleported there similar to how Seek teleports from his goo. Now if we look at the figure, we just see bones and flesh, which is exactly what the flesh puddles we see in the electrical rooms and the mines are made out of. Now the only problem with the teleport theory is how did these puddles get here and how does the figure teleport through them? For Seek, it's more understandable because his goo is like water and is all across the floors of the hotels, hence why he can chase us so frequently and how we had a huge boss fight against him in floor 2. But for the figure, however, he's made of flesh and bones, and besides that, he has a spotlight. All of these things can't just be formed like how Seek's goop can. And besides this, we don't see any flesh puddles in the library where we see the figure first, meaning he can't teleport there. And besides all of this, we know the figure can ingest food because he eats the glow bats in the mines. So this means that there's only one way for the figure to be in the electrical room, and the mines, which is the second possibility that there's multiple figures. Let's go back to those flesh puddles. Although we know the figure can't teleport between them, I believe that they can make more figures. This is because the flesh puddles are positioned specifically around the mines, which is also where the gloom bats are located. I believe that the figures would want to stay around the mines because they need food to survive, hence why the puddles of flesh would be around gloom bat nests as well. The only problem with this is how did the flesh puddles get there in the first place? The only other places where we see flesh are in us and the grumbles and giggles. We know it can't be us because of the fact that doors takes place in either limbo as hinted at on the code in front of the statue in the courtyard, or in Dante's Inferno's version of hell because of the multiple layers and Catholic inspiration in doors. Either way, we would not be made out of flesh, but instead would be a soul or spirit manifesting a human body. Hence why we still have a heartbeat during the heartbeat minigame and lungs to breathe during the dread encounter. And past this, if they were from us, then we would see more of them in floor 1, but we only see them in the electrical room. This would mean that the giggles and grumbles would have to be where these puddles come from because they're the only other fleshy monsters in the mines. This would also explain why the figure squashes the giggles when he sees them instead of eating them like how he does with the gloom bats. This would also explain why there's so many puddles in the mines, especially around the grumble nests. From my guess, after the figures kill the giggles or find dead grumbles, they put them in the puddles to make new figures. But all of this begs the question, how did the figures even get to floor 1? They don't know how to operate an elevator, and they also have no reason to stay in a library and past that an electrical room. And beyond all of this, how did the figures even get a spotlight in the first place? The grumbles have nothing like that inside of them. Unless the original figure did not originate from the giggles. I mean, think about it. We only see one at a time, which would make no sense if they only come from the flesh puddles that we see everywhere in the mines. To explain this, let's look back at Doors when it first came out. If we look at the figure back then, we see that he had no spotlight, but strangely enough in the hotel, plus update, he gained his spotlight. Now, why is that important? Well, let's look at the biggest addition to the Hotel Plus update, the rooms and Curious Light. Curious Light is one of the most mysterious characters in Doors. We know he's a marked celestial, and that he's way more powerful than Guiding and Mischievous Light. But the weird thing is that we don't know what he actually does. We know that Guiding Light guides the humans and other friendly creatures indoors, and Mischievous Light helps and boosts the entities indoors. Because of the modifiers and the strange red light we always see around, Seek that has no reason to be there unless Mischievous is creating it due to him not being a PNG. So that means that Curious Light is more than likely a mediator between the two, leading me to believe that he gave the figure a spotlight. This is because Curious Light is neutral, meaning that because he interacts with us and helps us with Rifts and Starlight, he has to balance it out with helping some of the entities. From my guess, he chose the figure because he isn't as dangerous as Seek, but also isn't as weak as a PNG. This would mean that he would assist in building the figures up from the puddles, and would give them the yellow spotlight as a form of survival for their fleshly bodies. This would also fit into the idea that the architects cannot create entities or floors, but can simply empower them. Because Curious Light is more powerful than the others, however, I think that he instead formed the figures out of the Grumbles' dead bodies. Think about it. Presuming that the Grumbles die, where else would they go? I mean, it would make sense for us to see their dead bodies, or maybe even skeletons, but we don't, leading me to believe that all of them were grabbed by Curious Light and used to form the figures. This would be accompanied by the Curious Light's guidance in the form of their spotlight, which would help them hunt food like the already existing glow bats, which go after anything luminescent. This would also make sense because if Curious Light did reconstruct them, they would be unable to be immortal like the other entities, meaning that they would need food to survive. This would also explain how there's a figure in the library. We know that they can move through the doors to get where they need to go, most likely meaning that after Curious Light formed them, the library figure would try to find him again to see if he can create more of his kind. But due to Curious Light being locked behind a locked doors, he couldn't find him, resulting in the figure residing in the library, trying to find a way to unlock a door that he can't even see. So with all of this, we know that the figure was originally created by Curious Light through the Grumble corpses and now reside in the mines, living off of glow bats and forming giggle corpses into puddles to try to make more of themselves, hoping that Curious Light will come back to form them. But there's one small plot hole. Why is there a flesh puddle inside of the castle we see at the end of floor 2? I mean, we know the figures come from the Grumbles, so it wouldn't make sense for them to be in the castle, which is only connected to the sewers of which the figures can't even go to without running into Seek. Unless maybe the castle's king is Curious Light, who would make the figures not just to hurt humans, but also to defend his castle. Now I know this sounds like a stretch, but think about it. Curious Light, as we know right now, is only seen in the rooms and the back doors, unlike Curious and Mischievous being seen all across the floors. This leads me to believe that Curious Light is seen by the entities as the king/god of doors, even though we know that he isn't due to the fact that he is just a marked celestial. However, we know that he is more powerful than the other architects and made the figures, making me believe that he did not only make the figures to deter us, but to also guard his castle. I doubt the castle was built by him, but it is a likely possibility that he was the king of the castle at some point and was guarded by the figures. This would fit with the theme of all of the architects being held to high regard by the entities, which we know because of the guardian angel statue that represents the only guardian we know of that other entities like El Goblino are aware of guiding light. This leads me to believe that at some point in time, Curious Light was the king of the castle and made the figures to guard him from Mischievous Light. But at some point in time, Curious Light was sealed away in the rooms and other pocket dimensions to prevent him from being in the doors. This would also be why we see the puddles in the castle and why we see the figures in the mines. We know they eat glow bats. So what if Curious Light fed them glow bats in the castle, and when he was locked away, the figures fled to the only place the glow bats can naturally be, the mines. This would also mean that the figures traveled back up to the castle to find their previous leader, hence why there's puddles right outside the gate. Now this is where the theory stops until floor 3 comes out and we find out what happened to Curious Light. My best idea is that Mischievous Light used Seek to help lock Curious Light up, but that would also contradict the fan theory that Mischievous Light is the she that Curious Light talks about in his lines. So who do you guys think sealed away Curious Light? Make sure to like and subscribe and click here to find out more about Seek.